YouTube going. The Goat House is back after the first ball game of the 2021 NFL season, and it was a good one. Buccaneers pull it off in the end. Cowboys impressive. A lot of offense, very entertaining game. A lot of talking points too. You know, the offensive pass interference or the non-offensive pass interference. A big talking point. We will discuss that. We will discuss all the key points, what players stood out, maybe some units that stood out. Overall takeaways, questions we have for teams moving forward, maybe what the game meant for teams moving forward, what to expect from the team. So we'll break it all down here for the Thursday night game. Make sure you check out our Twitter. All these thoughts were already on Twitter for the most part, you know, as they're happening live throughout the game, so you're missing out there. Fan voted picks, fans Pick'ems League on there as well, keeping you guys involved in our weekly picks video. Patreon, any link that you're looking for is down in the description and comments. Here's our Twitter. There's that Picks League, keeping you guys involved in weekly picks, shout outs, prizes. Not too late to join that. Go check it out. Link down below. Let's get this out of the way first. The offensive pass interference or non-offensive pass interference call on Chris Godwin. That is the main talking point here. And I gave you guys all my thoughts on Twitter. And my thoughts were, you know, I get really frustrated when there is a call that you can't really explain, like you can't find a way to explain it, or there's kind of a soft call, you know, where the league's heading the wrong direction. Those I complain about. This one I didn't feel like that felt either of the, or that applied to either of those. I thought it was, you could argue it was offensive pass interference, but it was understandable why they didn't call it. And the more I watch it, the more I kind of agree with them. And you see it right here, that they both got their hands on each other. They're both, and this is the key point, their bodies are so close to one another, their chests are almost touching, where this is where it's very tough for the refs. You almost have to make an assumption, you know, what led to them breaking apart? You know, what led to, you know, was there enough contact by one guy, not both? Did he, you know, interfere with them, and that was the only reason he made the catch? You know, the refs would have to assume. You don't want that in a crucial situation. So another reason why they tend to not call this, and it's very understandable why they don't call it. A lot of people bringing up the Cowboys losing on week 1 last year, you know, on that pass interference call, offensive pass interference call, and it's way different. You could definitely argue that it shouldn't have been offensive pass interference, but it's way different where it's it wasn't like this where they're this close, you know. But kind of taking a look at it, and you see that, I think that's where people have a problem, where Godwin, you know, pushes off a little bit. But, you know, the more I watch, the more I realize he actually didn't change his arm. His arms kind of stayed, I'm cut off here, but his arm kind of stayed like that the whole time. He didn't actually extend his hand out. And the key part is that, you know, they're both kind of grabbing each other, both got their hands in. But this is actually a really smart play, and the DB tries to sell it. It's actually a really smart play by Godwin to close himself within the DB, chest to chest almost, because it's so hard for the refs to make a call, and then to last second kind of break out and make that back shoulder grab. Great throw by Brady. The timing was ridiculous, by the way, and he changed that play before the snap, so that was ridiculous. So definitely not. A lot of people are like, oh, they helped Brady out. The refs helped Brady out here. Phantom call. No, it's definitely not a phantom call. This is rarely called. It's understandable why it's called. If you want to say it, this in your book, this should be offensive pass interference. That's understandable. The more I watch it, the more I realize, the more I kind of agree with the call. You know, it's very tough to make that call. So that's just what happens the more and more I watch it there. You know, so this is where I found the video, some random Twitter site. So if you want to, or Twitter page. So if you want to go check it out. But kind of my takeaways, there's some key points, real quick, key points on the screen. That's just for people that like to skim through the video. But first off, let's talk about kind of my main takeaways here. Well, the Buccaneers turned the ball. They're a little sloppy. They turned the ball over quite a bit. You know, and there I saw something like they were actually the first team in NFL history to turn the ball over that many times, lose the turnover margin by that much, and have over 100 yards in penalties and still win the game. So what's the takeaway there? You know, they're that good where they're that talented, that good where they can still overcome that and beat a pretty solid team in the Cowboys. You know, so that's like a positive takeaway. But the negative is, why are they still so sloppy? You know, last year, early last year, they were losing games because how sloppy they were, the mistakes like crazy, and they didn't win that division basically because of that, and the Saints were playing really good football. Against the Saints, they were playing some real sloppy football, a lot of turnovers. First game of the year against the Saints was one example. And when they got to the playoffs, they really cut that down. Brady was still making mistakes at the end of games, kind of. But they really cut it down. That was a big reason they won it all. But this is a team that is so talented that they can overcome like the sloppiness, the mess ups, the mistakes, the turnovers. But it's kind of their identity in a way, which is kind of the negative. Like they got to cut down on that. They kind of just got these big time playmakers that could turn the ball over or assist in, turning the ball over. Kind of thinking of like that Fournette. Technically that was a Brady interception, but that was really on Fournette there, which Fournette ended up picking it up after that. I thought he had a pretty solid game catching the ball. He had a real good grab on Micah Parsons. That was a tough grab to make. That was fantastic. So he ended up picking it up. So that's kind of my big takeaway on the Buccaneers kind of moving forward. Like, yeah, they're good enough to overcome that. What if they play a flawless game in terms of not turning the ball over? They're going to just dominate teams. That's the positive. Negative is they got to cut it out with this stuff because it's actually a thing for them. Can they repeat when this is being a thing, for the Buccaneers? That's my main takeaway in kind of questions moving forward for the Buccaneers. For the Cowboys, and again, week one, you don't want to base too much off week one. You want to keep it as kind of questions and not, okay, this is a problem. This, because anything can happen in week one. But the Cowboys, it's pretty much the same thing of what I said before the season. This is a really good team, really talented offense if healthy. So if they stay, that's just remains the question. If they stay healthy, they'll be in the playoffs. They'll be I'm not basing that off this game at all either. It's kind of was my thoughts before, but you see it in action. You kind of see it even though it's week one. You see it against a pretty damn good football team, obviously defending Super Bowl champions. The offense looked pretty damn good. Defense is still a question. I think it will grow. I think it'll be better than last year. But I guess the question is, because they're running a unique defense under Dan Quinn. There's a lot of moving around, a lot of rotating, a lot of, Micah Parsons is moving around different, place to place. He's an edge rusher kind of standing up 1 second. He's a middle linebacker 1 second. He's an outside off the ball linebacker 1 second. Sometimes it's pretty tricky to coach that defense. And it really takes time to get used to it. Overall, the talent is better, but that's something to monitor too. Will that kind of having that almost in a way a multiple defense, a lot of movement, rotation, will that cost them some games? Could that? So it's kind of questions there. That's kind of my takeaways. Well, and kind of going, the biggest thing is the Bucs, made those mistakes and still won the game. You go back to the Cowboys, should that be a negative for them in this game? They force, those back-to-back turnovers at one point. Ronald Jones fumbles and Leonard Fournette drops the ball. Diggs makes an interception. Hell of a game by Diggs, by the way. We'll talk about that. But, and then, should they have capitalized more? It felt like the offense did enough. But should they have capitalized more? Should they have won the game with the amount of mistakes, not really fluky, but weird mistakes the Buccaneers made? You could argue that. So that could be the negative there for the Cowboys as well. But yeah, kind of going to some points that are on your screen. Yeah, Dak Prescott coming off that gruesome ankle injury, lower leg injury, but really the shoulder situation, unable to take real reps during this whole training camp process, preseason process, and the staff not really knowing what the injury is. It's like a baseball injury, and we got to call the Rangers and the Yankees. Not good, but he was fantastic. Dak Prescott had himself a hell of a game. Even some of those games that were kind of in tight windows, they were real good throws. Maybe you could argue they're too risky. Maybe he shouldn't have thrown that. I think one went through Lamb. It's a tough catch, but he should have caught it. One went through Lamb's hands. Carlton Davis ended up picking it up. But I thought, even those balls were perfect, So, I was impressed with Dak. And you see the receiving core. You spread the field out so much with all those talented players. Again, CeeDee Lamb had a couple of drops, but he's so good after the catch. He made some big plays. Cooper was fantastic as well. Gallup made some plays. I thought that, Schultz and Jarwin in terms of catching the ball were pretty damn solid as well. So you see the collection of weapons they have in terms of the receiving corps. It's ridiculous, and it makes tough defenses, or good defenses look, worse than they are, like the Buccaneers being an example. So it's just so dominant what they have on their offense. You see how much of a problem it is. I thought play calling was good. There was some great play choices, play calling. I guess drives were stopped short sometimes. They didn't capitalize fully, but I think it was off drops and whatnot. Other than, the play calling I was impressed. You're not really, well, again, you can't just say, this is what I mean when I always say, don't, predict things in the future based off week one. An overreaction would be, all right, their play calling is fixed because last year everyone was worried about, after seeing this game, they're good to go. It's going to be great the rest of the year. That'd be a bit of an overreaction, but it's promising. It's something to be excited about, so that looked good. Trevon Diggs shadowed Mike Evans this game, and Mike Evans was pretty much non-existent. He also came away with a big-time pass deflection late and an interception. You guys know I was a big fan of Trevon Diggs pre-draft. I loved his tape. I was higher on him than anyone else, so I'm excited for him. And he got his hands on the ball, made some plays last year as well. He looks better in that number 7 as well. I like to see that. So that's something to get excited about as well. Running game was non-existent. I wouldn't overreact too much. There's people already saying, I shouldn't have drafted Zeke that high in fantasy because it's just another down year. And the Cowboys didn't give him the ball. It's going to be this all year. That would be an overreaction. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you should be all happy about what happened last night with that, because when they didn't run the ball effectively, the running game was disappointing. And Zeke, when he did get the ball, he wasn't all too impressive to me. There was one time they got him the ball outside and he had a lane on the outside. And I don't know if he just didn't trust his speed and quickness to get out there, or he didn't see it. Either way, that's not good. And you see the lack of burst and quickness. So I guess we need more of a sample size, so we don't want to overreact, but overall it's not good. But why I say you shouldn't, overreact and be like, oh, why did I do it? Why did I draft Zeke? Because they just played the best run defense in football, literally elite run defense here. So the game plan was obviously to pass the ball because of that, but because the Cowboys could. So I wouldn't overreact too much. Overall coverage was not good for the Cowboys. Trevon Diggs had himself a ball game, but everyone else, they were getting beat way too easy. Anthony Brown had himself a pretty poor night on the outside. Double moves will really get him. He had some poor technique, opened up his hips way too early, just giving freedom to the receivers. So that wasn't good. That's still kind of a problem, which was almost expected. I'd say specifically on the deep end, deep coverage, it was just too easy for guys to get loose pretty damn quick. And there was one, again, overall, Dan Quinn, upgrade in terms of defense coordinator. Overall, I thought he had a pretty good night in terms of his calls, even if they're giving up points. But there was one moment where he had DeMarcus Lawrence on Gronk on a crucial third down and blitzed everyone else. Questionable one there. And it is a little tricky with the kind of a crazy defense, rotating guys in and out. So I guess something to monitor there. But the Cowboys had this one. You kind of felt the Bucs had too much time there. They had this one in the bag. At one point, I know they were kind of gifted by God. A great play by KZ though at the same time, but it's pretty promising. But it's just kind of my same thought. My thoughts on the Cowboys really don't change. It's just stay healthy. If they stay healthy, they're at least a playoff team in my eyes. If they stay healthy, so that's really just kind of the key there. Defense is going to have to grow. For the Buccaneers, Tom Brady was just ridiculous. He still got it. That's kind of the storyline for the Bucs too. They still got it. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, ridiculous. Probably the one I'm most impressed with. Because I'm not surprised with Brady, not surprised with Gronk. I was surprised how much they gave the ball to Gronk, how much they used Gronk. Because last year it was kind of like, we'll just use him as a blocker. Let's not overdo it with him. And they unleashed him in the big moments down the stretch. I guess they really wanted to win this first game, and it was a tight game, kind of back and forth, so they used him a lot. So I was surprised with that, but most impressed with Antonio Brown. The guy still got it. I mean, the quickness is still there, the burst, the acceleration, overall athleticism is 100% still there. Like, not 99%, 100% still there. The route running ability is ridiculous. The big play ability is ridiculous. He still got it. Like, he could be the best receiver on this team. It's pretty ridiculous to think about. So, but Brady was ridiculous. Stats will show 2 interceptions, a big reason why I always say I'm not a big stats guy. Sometimes I say I'm not a huge stats guy. That would be a good reason, because he had 2 interceptions. One was Fournette's fault. One was a Hail Mary. That was a weird play. Ali Marpet, I believe, made that touchdown-saving tackle, perhaps, which was at the end of the first half. Ridiculous game for Brady. See him adjusting at the line, adjusting plays. It was just too easy to read. This could be a confusing defense to read sometimes too, because they're rotating guys. Micah Parsons could be this guy, he could be that guy. He could be, a different type of player dropping in coverage, rushing. It could be pretty confusing. It was just a layup for Tom Brady out there. See him adjusting plays, making big time plays, the timing on his throws, the deep balls dropped in a bucket. He had back-to-back plays at one point. He fit a tight window ball into Gronk, and then he dropped one in the bucket right when he was about to get drilled to Antonio Brown. It was just a fantastic game. That last drive was great as well. But yeah, we talked about Gronk and AB. In terms of the other weapons, Mike Evans got shut down, was pretty much non-existent. You see him showing like he was a little bit of pain at one point on the sideline. Not really too worried, but it's kind of how Mike Evans is, though. He's kind of like a huge play guy out of nowhere, big game guy out of nowhere. He kind of has games like this. But then he'll have, in terms of a fantasy aspect, he'll just have like a 30-point game out of nowhere, whatever it may be. So it's kind of just Mike. I'm not too worried about that. But Godwin, he made up for that. Where most people would call offensive, or a lot of people would call offensive pass interference. I thought that was a fantastic play. Smart play by Chris Godwin. And that was huge. Tough to catch those back shoulders like that. But other than that, and he had some big plays. He had a touchdown as well. But he had, before the fumble, he actually had a drop that could have been a touchdown or led to a touchdown. And then not too long after that, he had that fumble, which almost cost the game there. It cost them the game there. So Godwin, a little all over the place, back and forth. And that's kind of the storyline last year. 2 years ago was like, all right, he's consistent. This guy's a much improved player, and he was. And then last year was kind of the story, too. Kind of dropped some balls. He had multiple broken fingers, I believe it was last year, so understandable. So he's kind of a big player, bust type guy. You kind of get the feeling of. CeeDee Lamb had somewhat of a similar game we talked about. And kind of going to that last drive where Godwin fumbled and gave the Cowboys, they kind of gave Cowboys a chance. Credit to DeMonte KZ with punching that ball out. Huge, absolutely huge. But kind of going back to that drive, that the Buccaneers got the ball and they had the potential to put the game away on that drive. And what most teams do, hate it. They go conservative. They run the ball. The clock is more important to them to just go and win the game. And I love what the Buccaneers did. They kind of did both the right thing. They kind of did a mixture of everything there until Godwin ended up fumbling, which was just kind of not part of their plans. It's really not the play calling's fault. But I love the play calling on that drive. Credit Tom Brady, too, not just the coaching staff. But they threw the ball, did what was working, and they got themselves in good field position where, okay, we can ice the game. We're in great position. And then they just started throwing runs at them. And they were draining the clock, and they caught the Cowboys off guard because they were throwing all over them. And they were getting some good yards. And they throw that screen pass to Chris Godwin. I love that play call because you just don't want to only run the ball like most teams do. And the screen pass could potentially, it's unexpected, unpredictable, runs the clock, and potentially could be a big play. It really was a big play until Godwin fumbled. So I do got to credit that drive in general, even though it resulted in a negative thing. I thought that was beautifully orchestrated by the Buccaneers staff. Offensive line was fantastic. Brady had a lot of time. He's able to just kind of bounce in the pocket a little bit like he does. So the offensive line is fantastic. Vita Vea was ridiculous. We know him as just a complete run stuffer, young nose tackle that's getting better every step of the way. But he got some pressure. And more than just the one play, where he just drove his man back into Dak Prescott, which almost created a fumble. He threw that forward, but it looked a little live. It kind of looked like that could be one of those forward fumbles, which I'm not a fan of. If the quarterback's able to spiral it forward, I've seen them call that a fumble. I'm more of a fan of incomplete, but it would have been understandable if they called it a fumble live, because then if they scored a touchdown, you guys know the drill. But they call it incomplete. It was pretty clear incomplete, so can't really complain. But Vita Vea, was an absolute monster there. Defensively for the Bucs, they were giving up a good. That's kind of what they do. We talked about with the Bucs. When I kind of evaluated them during the offseason, that they got a really good defense. It was getting better, but a negative of theirs was kind of giving up space early in routes, kind of giving up too much cushion. And that kind of showed here. I know Sean Murphy-Bunting got hurt, and they're going to miss him for about 3 to 4 weeks, dislocated elbow, which sounds worse than it is. Well, in terms of length of how long they're out, 3 to 4 weeks. Maybe we can call it about 4 to 5 weeks. But yeah, they were kind of giving up too much cushion there. maybe just knocking the rust off of the defense. I'm not really too worried. They didn't blitz a lot either, which they were pretty good. They blitzed early, and I thought it worked. So I think Todd Bowles was kind of keeping some things in the back pocket there. So that's why you can't really overreact too much. It's just two really good offenses. Running game, Ronald Jones. I actually had Gus Edwards on. I'm in 2 leagues. I have him in both leagues, but I had him starting in 1 league, and then so I had to take him out. I ended up putting Ronald Jones in, a little thinner running back, heavy on receiver in that league. I put Ronald Jones in, so that was a little disappointing. I think him fumbling, you're out of there, you're done. So that was disappointing, and he wasn't really getting anywhere. Credit to the Cowboys' run defense as well, because they're missing some guys on the inside, in terms of the interior defensive line. Oso Odigizua, who's a pretty good draft pick, had to start in the game, and not the big name rotation guys in there either. So credit to the Cowboys there. They got Bernard going on that last drive. You see that, Brady, and I know that's a Brady call right there. We got to pass the ball. We got to get down there quick. Give me Gio Bernard. Perfect situation. So they'll start to use him more and more. I think he was a little limited during practice, so that's something to keep an eye on. He could be their best back going forward. But they love them some Leonard Fournette. They listed Rojo as their starter in their final depth chart, their first depth chart of the regular season, or their actual depth chart. But Fournette was the guy. He was a starter. And then he dropped that ball, but started picking it up a little bit. But if this team could really benefit from some explosive runners, and Ronald Jones, there was times last year where he ripped off some explosive runs where it's like, okay, this guy's legit, but it doesn't show up enough. But will we see that? So running game, but like I said, it's not that much of a negative for me overall because like I was talking about before, Godwin fumbled. They kind of got in that mode where like, hey, let's catch him off guard. Let's run the ball, run the clock, and still get yards. It looked pretty good. So it's not anything I'm really worrying about here, big time. Coverage could pick it up a little bit. Not really. Again, nothing I'm really worried about. Other thing I wanted to point out, I kind of did the Cowboys' whole rotation with the linebackers, but we heard going into the season that they're going to use Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch on early downs, running downs, and they're going to use Micah Parsons and Keanu O'Neal, who's a safety turn linebacker, on passing downs. And we saw Micah Parsons play 51 snaps, 51, that's a lot. 50 for Keanu O'Neal, that's a lot. And then Jalen Smith was 16. It's all on the top of my head. I'm pretty sure this is accurate. This is definitely accurate, though. 16 Jalen Smith, 14 for Leighton Vander Esch, That's combined 30 snaps for those two guys, the well-known Cowboys linebackers, and then 50 each, 51 for Micah Parsons each in the whole game. So, what do we make of that? Well, first glance, they're gearing towards the new school guys. That's what they're going to go with. The other guys could be trade candidates. They're on their way out. That's what it looks like. Or, the Buccaneers came out and just threw the crap out of the ball, and we kind of knew that going into the game. It's not a run-first team. They're not a run-heavy team, so maybe play the pass defense guys, So maybe we don't want to overreact to that. But at the same time, I thought the pass defense linebackers, the passing down linebackers, you want to call them, Parsons and Neal, mainly Parsons, I thought they looked pretty good in stopping the run. Sure, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch are better. Is it that much of a difference? So that's something to monitor. Another thing, people were ripping Micah Parsons. People that just don't know football, I think. I'm not saying he played a great game. I'm not worried about Micah Parsons. There's people trying to say, he's all over the place. Yeah, he's all over the place because the Cowboys are playing him all over the place. They play a middle linebacker, outside linebacker, rushing the edge, dropping back in coverage a lot. I think people just didn't realize his responsibilities on some plays, and just started to rip him for that. So I not only disagree with that, I know that they're wrong on that. So, and then he had, people argue that he could have picked that off, when he was on Fournette. He could have made a little better play, tight coverage. So I thought Fournette just made a really, really good play. First game for Parsons. Wasn't the greatest game, but people for some reason ripping him, for no reason there. So that was another takeaway. Trying to think of anything else. Always trying to think last second anything else on these games. I'm just excited for more games on Sunday. I'm excited to see what these teams got because there's no real true identity. We kind of have an idea, but for these teams quite yet, it's only been one game. But a very entertaining game overall. If the Buccaneers would have lost, it would have been because of those mistakes. Just those brutal mistakes, mainly the last one by Godwin there. The Cowboys, why did they lose? I think the Buccaneers, Buccaneers got a little more there. Maybe the Cowboys could have capitalized a little more, but again, their offense played very well. The play calling was solid, very solid. They could have capitalized a little more. I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, you play the Super Bowl champs in Tampa, first game of the year. That's tough. Maybe the defense work in progress, kind of getting used to the rotation. With those other linebackers, they were using Jaron Curse, who I actually like. They were using him a bit. He's kind of like a box linebacker type guy, so another Keanu Neal type guy, maybe more of a safety. So I kind of liked what they were doing with that. But the problem is you're just shuffling guys in and out. Sometimes it hurts you a bit. So kind of what I'm looking for with them. But to see how that works out. That's going to wrap it up, though. Any more thoughts? We got you on Twitter. So check us out there. Picks League, fan voted picks, all thoughts during live games. You're going to want to follow that for Sunday. Cannot wait for that. So check it out. Link, description, comments for anything you need there. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.